Well, since Chair Nelson won't be to the meeting today, he's been excused, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And first item is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the agenda as written.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
And then we have the minutes from April 23rd, 2024. Does anyone have any changes that haven't been communicated yet to us? No? I'll take a motion to approve them.
Motion to approve the minutes of April 23rd.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So on the consent agenda was Crete Distribution Inc. Seeking commercial site plan approval for a warehouse addition at 1203 Spring Creek Place within the BP Business Park Zone. And this is no additional administrative actions or discussions needed. We did that with the agenda, right? Or do we have to do the consent agenda? Oh, okay. Does anyone have any questions or want to move the consent agenda item off of the consent agenda? If not, I take a motion to adopt the consent agenda. We don't?
Not on consent.
Oh. Oh, do I have to read the whole thing? Yes? Okay. 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 We did that. We did all of those things, just in bits. So we have the administrative session where it, or did we want to do the legislative session first?
You're done.
You're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
As good as it gets in here.
We hope it's good news.
While you
For
were
everyone.
gone, he agreed to a 5,000% increase in the permit fees, but just teasing. Yeah, I'm just teasing.
All right, so
Good luck.
we'll just turn the time over to Planner Weiss. Good night.
Okay, so I'm going to do our little training. This is a very quick one.
For everyone's especially because we have some new members, we're going to try to do some training every meeting, alternating between a quick kind of topical how planning works in the city or how the code works or how a map works, alternating with a longer training in the other weeks of more of a planning principle or something a little more academic.
Yes, and you left the short one to me, which is a godsend, because I should not be doing the other. Okay, so a lot of this may be repetitive, and I don't want it to appear as, condescending in any way. This is our Springville map that is available from our website, just from services, and then maps, and then the one that you will click is the Springville City eMap, and then it sends you to this. You'll click that you won't do anything dastardly with the information on here, and then it gives you full access to do something dastardly with the information. This is a map that is really very easy to use once you get into it. If you've done any ArcGIS kind of stuff before, a lot of this will look very, very familiar to you. There's the ones that we in planning use the most are our layer list, and then our measurement tool. And the measurement tool hates me, just so you're all aware of that. So the layer list will just, is just that, all of the various layers of information we have stored in our GIS system. And so we can, when we meet with developers or property owners, potential developers, we can, and we meet with our city engineer, and we all can sit down and we can go over, look at all of the things that are included in this map that will, as you see, as I'm adding these layers, will inform a property owner or potential developer about the things that they will need, that they may need as far as infrastructure, how far they may be away from something. You can click on it and will tell you if it's a 6-inch pipe or a 4-inch pipe. So it provides a lot of information about our infrastructure as well. I try to stay out of that because I know just enough to be really dangerous. In our parcels, if you click the alt parcels, which is the one I always use because I'm blind, it puts the lines a little bit more distinct, as you can see. So you just click on the parcels, and then you can come down to our planning department, which I'm going to click off parcels for a minute just so that it's easier to see. And this will show you all of our zones. And it makes it very easy. It also shows our overlays. And you can actually, with this, you can take the overlay districts off. But it's nice to have those when we're talking to someone, if they're asking about, well, what can I do with this property, knowing that beyond just the base zone, which is all of this. So this is the base zone. So when we speak about a base zone and overlay, the overlay are these ones that are applied to just specific areas within the community. So we have the Westfields overlay. We also have, down here, we have the materials processing overlay. We have I'm trying to think of another overlay that we have out here. The historic district overlay, which is mainly in like our Plat A area, all along here. And you can kind of see it more when I take it off. Oops, and you can see that changes a little bit. And so when an overlay is put on, when an overlay is overlaid, it will take precedence over the base zoning. So for instance, if we have a density in a specific area on the base zone, but the Westfields overlay allows for a density bonus, then if they with certain provisions, then that Westfields overlay can fit. Other than that, all the other requirements of that zone apply. So that's the easiest way. Go ahead, Josh is going to clarify. And
No, nothing to
correct that.
clarify. It just kind of appeared in my mind another reason why we use overlays, because a lot of people say, why don't you just change the zone? If you'll zoom out, well, actually, you can see it perfectly on the screen. You can see that this historic district overlay applies across R15 and R18 and Village Center and CC. So an overlay allows us additionally to put additional layers of design control or other requirements that are more attuned to a location than a specific zone. So in the Westfields, for instance, doesn't matter if it's zone Village Center or R18, R110, R15, R2, all of the design standards apply because they're applied to a geographic area using the Westfields overlay. So it both means that we don't have to put all of those design controls in the base zone, but in each different base zone, but it also allows us to apply different design controls to different areas of the city without developing different base zones. So you'll see up on the east side of the city, we have R110 and R18, but they don't have the Westfields overlay on them. So it reduces the number of zones we have to create if we want us to treat a specific area a certain way, like a corridor overlay. We want everything on Main Street to have a certain appearance or feel or apply some additional standards. So that's another reason why overlays are a tool instead of just adopting a different base zone.
Yeah, and just as it allows us to extend certain things beyond a zone, like the West Fields, it also allows us to limit, much like we've done down here with the materials processing zone, that we put it in a very specific area, knowing that it was not necessarily the activities that would be allowed in that were not necessarily something that we wanted to spread throughout the entire light industrial area, but knew that there was a need for it with certain businesses that were
already there.
Yes, yeah. So it allows us. So it really does allow a lot of flexibility because, like Josh says, it allows us to go beyond and over more than one zone, but it also allows us to keep something in a specific area if we are concerned about the spread of that specific use.
Is there a way to put the legend up so you can see what, I mean, you guys are aware of what the colors are.
You don't know these colors? I'm
I
wow.
don't know the colors.
You're gonna
I'm glad to hear you
you're
say
gonna
that.
flunk your planning commission test.
Yeah, just,
If Ralph
Yes,
doesn't
so
know.
if you just hit the down arrow next to zoning, all of them will be listed here. Another thing that is
but it
very,
doesn't come up with the interactive map then. So you have to
Yeah,
kind
if
of
you-
bounce in and out. right?
well, no, well, so it's always, so the layer list will always be there. You can always jot down this. The other thing that is very nice is if you click on one of these, if you click on a parcel, it will say, okay, so this is the RC zone. It will give you
Yeah,
a quick summary of what is allowed in that zone and what the purpose of that is, and then it will go on to the specific parcel. So you can click on any one, and with this little arrow, you will see where it will say one of two. It will then tell you, it will spread out to the entire zone and tell you about that. So it's nice because you can do that, and beyond just seeing the color and knowing what that zone is, you can also get a brief description of the intent of that zone, and so that often helps as well.
You can turn the legend on too.
no, this works great. If you just click on it and it gives you, then it's.
Oh, and then you do things like this, and it hates you and goes all blue. Okay, there we go. So anyway, and the other nice thing about our map that is really very useful a lot of times, because as the county is the one who is, as you know, the ultimate keeper of all land records, I can click on this parcel, go to, and it will tell me my basic owner information and such, but I can link to more info, and it will take me to the county. It allows me to see a picture of it, to value and tax history, and if there's any documents. So often Laura and I are looking at this to make sure if there are any, what the recorded documents may be as far as easements or any liens, anything like that. So it's always very, very useful to us to be able to have, to connect over to the counties and have that information there as well.
Does it show you the overlay when you click on that property? Or does it just show you the zone, like you clicked on?
So it will, so if you have, if you're over here and you have under planning and development, if you have the zoning overlay district box clicked, then it will show. Sometimes when I'm talking to a property owner, the zoning overlay gets a lot, and so I will take that off so that I can look at a parcel of land. But so you just click that on and off, and it will show you if there is an overlay that is applied to that
Will you
parcel
click
as
on
well.
the Western Paving and ID it just so we can see?
Yeah, so for example, so here's Western Paving with the materials processing overlay. And as you can see, when I click on that, it actually comes up with the definition of that overlay. And then I will go to 3, and then it will list all of the property information for that parcel. And then it will go to the third one, which is the base zoning.
So do you have to have the overlay turned on for that information to come
Yes.
out?
Yes, so for the overlay to show, it has to come on. Now, I believe the default is that the zoning overlay, when you click on the planning and development, that the default is that the overlay is already on there too. So you have to actively go in and click it off. But otherwise, it will just show.
The reason I'm asking is because, okay, we just had a meeting with this exact location. I thought that was a great example. But a property owner could potentially go onto the city map, have not clicked the overlay because they don't really understand what it means. They can click on their property and it can tell them different kind of information than really, and they won't find out until they come talk to you or somebody else, right?
Yes,
It
and
could be, like Carla said, all the overlays are on as default, so you'd have to actually proactively turn it off to not see it.
Okay.
But
Yeah, so
Yes.
typically what will happen is I'll get a call about a property, specifically, so for example, this area here has been on the market, has recently been sold, and so in the meantime, between when it was put on the market and when it was actually purchased, a ton of calls about this. And so people would call and say, well, and they would pull up the map. And this is the other thing why our map is better than looking at the map at the county, is because it does provide this information that there's an overlay versus the county will just show you who owns it. And so it will automatically come in and they're like, so what's this WF all over? And then I can explain to them about the density bonuses that may be available following certain design guidelines that are set up in our code. And then if they don't want to do it, take that off and talk about what the options are. But like I said, those overlays are set as the default. So it's easier to explain to people how to take them off and what they don't mean,
Right.
than to try to get them to figure out when they need to put those on, if that makes
answers
sense.
my question, because
Okay.
that's my question was, is if the homeowner or the property owner got on there, looked it up, they would have to turn off the overlay before they could say, well, I didn't know anything about that.
Correct. So the other thing that is very nice, although it is not precise, but it is very useful to give someone an idea of what's going on their property. Say if they're like, well, we tell you that, oh, you need this much frontage on your parcel. So, oh, that one doesn't work because it's a condominiumized one. Well, so much for that example. Okay, so say, for example, they come here. They can use this measuring tool, which will come up. It allows you to do an area. It allows you to do just the straight. And like I said, this thing hates me, so we will see this. But we can do a very quick measurement of, oh, it looks like your boundary line is approximately 112. So if we know they need 200 feet, we're going to say, well, you're definitely out. If they need 111, we're like, oh, you're probably pretty close. So we let them know that this isn't by any means that they would have, it is not a substitution for having a surveyor or having it done professionally, but it can give them some idea of whether or not they are close. And it helps in that way too. And also helps our engineer when we do meet with property owners to be able to kind of say, okay, well, if you're going to have to do about this much frontage of whatever. So that, and about how far away is that. So that's just kind of the basics of it. The other thing that, and because like I said, it does pop up and tell you the information about that. You don't have to worry about flipping to our code to be able to say, okay, this is what is this? What's the intent of this? But the other area of our code that it'll probably be something that comes up quite often with you as planning commissioners is this Title 11 of our development code. And the zoning district regulations, that's in chapter 4, and then the land use matrix. That will list all of the zones as we have them, and the list, and it freezes that top line so you can scroll down and you can look and see what those uses are. So that's just it. Those are just the two things, especially like when I very first started, gave me a really good understanding of and just some context for the things that we were talking about in the city. And so it's also very helpful to you if your neighbors call you to be able to say, well, you have these resources available to you. Let me show you where they are. Because I think a lot of times people who live in our community, their default is they go to the county, not recognizing that we have a much better resource for the type of information that they really need here on our website. So basically just want to walk you through that. So when we start flipping around, because Josh is much quicker at this and he makes me dizzy flipping around from screen to screen, that's where he's going and why.
So if they go to the county map, it will not have the zoning or the overlay.
No, it will not. It will only have basic parcel information as far as the parcel ID, the owner, and that's about it, and the use. And then it will be able to click into any information regarding tax or assessed value, because that is what the county is that's what their purpose is, so.
And our county land information website is actually really, really good to use because it brings the recorder and the assessor information all together into one page where you can just click on that Documents tab. In Salt Lake, the assessor information is in one database and the recorder's information is another database that I think runs off an IBM computer from the early 90s.
Yeah, I'm
that
pretty
you
sure
have to log
it's- yeah.
into and
Which
go.
wasn't that long ago, really.
No, it wasn't.
Trying to
So
compare.
to have all that information for us, the assessor and the recorder information all on that one portal is really helpful, but it doesn't have those municipal fee, information.
That's really nice, thank you.
Yeah, so, yeah, just a quick thing, it took me a minute, to kind of, when I first started to feel comfortable with it, and so, now we all fly around it, and everybody's like, whoa, what did you just do? And it's really not that difficult, and, so, when your neighbors call you, you can say, well, here, let me show you where this is. Because I think that anything we can do to inform and empower the community to find out information on their own is always very helpful, to just kind of, like I said, inform and empower them. I'm babbling. Okay. Am I done or am I next? Oh, hi. Okay. So now, do we need to
Let them,
do their stuff? I'll wait.
We'll now move on to the legislative session, with the Springville Community Development requests amendments to the moderate income housing element of the general plan. And we will hear again from Planner Weiss.
All right. Oh, if this was just as simple as a map. So we have a moderate income housing element in our general plan. It is required by state law. And then we also have to report annually on the progress that we're making towards that plan. The state also outlined in code specific strategies that municipalities and the counties can utilize to achieve the goals of moderate income housing that the state has determined are worthwhile goals. And so, in a lot of ways, we are very hamstrung by what the state code says. When picking strategies for how we are going to implement or how we are going to facilitate the development of moderate income housing, we can only select from those strategies listed in state code. We don't have any leeway to create our own or to do anything other than what they suggest.
Hey, Carla, just as
Yes.
a quick clarification before you get too far,
Of course.
how does the state currently define moderate income housing?
So moderate income housing is based on 120% of the median income for the county.
Okay.
So it is based upon the county, not the state. And so we go by Utah counties, which fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, has a fairly high income. And so to that 120 is, in a lot of ways, it's harmful, and in a lot of ways, it's very helpful because we do have, we don't have to, maybe, I guess, for lack of a better word, discount things as much as we would if we were trying to make something fit, say in Salt Lake County, where there's a vast amount there's the people who are not making anything, but yet you've got some of the richest parts of the state there. So it gets very convoluted. But so typically, and then the low income housing is typically considered to be 50 or 30%. So moderate is kind of the 80 and 120%, and those are set. Those percentages are set by the feds or the federal government in various programs, either through housing and urban development or social service programs.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
Additionally, kind of how we figure out what that actually means in terms of housing is you would take the 120% of your median income, your AMI, and 30% of that, so 30% of gross income is essentially the benchmark number for the maximum percentage of gross income that can be dedicated to housing before someone isn't considered housing burdened.
Yes.
So the housing affordable to someone who makes 120% of the area median income is housing that costs less than 30% of that gross income, either in rent or in mortgage payments and the other related expenses.
Yes, on a yearly basis. So, there's a little bit of disconnect because it doesn't take into account the fact that there may be property tax or mortgage insurance that is mandatory in your home payment, as well as it does. I think it does allow for a certain percentage of that to be as utilities. But it's not always the most accurate. And once again, it's from your gross income. And I'd be in a much better situation in my shopping life if I was able to live on my gross income rather than my net. When you're looking at purchasing a home, it's based upon, they always ask where you're taking home and what you can afford. So,
Do we know what are those numbers then?
as far as the home,
Yeah, like what's the home value?
Just in the
I
plan.
just looked it up.
yeah,
The median income in Utah County is $85,000. At 120,000, at 120%, I mean, you're at $100,000. So your mortgage breakdown is that in order to qualify, it couldn't be more than $2,500 in a mortgage.
and we all know how accurate how much that's going to work.
Well, $2,500
market
a
today.
month.
Oh, 2,500, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, looking at home prices now, that used to be, that's fine, I can do that, but, that's not a thing now. When some two-bedroom apartments in Salt Lake County are costing $2,500 a month. So it is, unfortunately, the market as it is right now. So anyway, recognizing that, we also are further constrained by the state in that if we have a fixed guideway system, which fortunately we do not, meaning a front runner station, we would have to pick 7 strategies and show progress on 5. So in a few years, when Frontrunner comes down, that may be where we are. Right now, without one, we have to pick 5 strategies. Well, we have to certify on 3 strategies. Now, that means just to say that we are compliant. If we want to be prioritized for transportation funding from the state, then we have to show progress in 5 areas. So, right now, we're kind of in this weird black hole of time where we have our general plan coming in, getting ready to do that, and we will be doing a complete revamp of our moderate income housing, meaning they'll do a housing analysis, market analysis of everything that we have. But we are also at a point where we are not by any fault of our own, but just the way it is working, we're going to have a harder time showing progress in all 5 of the current strategies that we have. And a lot of that is just based upon the fact that we've done everything we can, and now it's up to the developers, and we're just kind of where we're at. And so we have chosen additional strategies, and I don't know if I should say this on public, with the idea that just throw the spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks kind of idea. That the more strategies we have out there that we are working on, we have a much better chance of being able to show progress on 5. And so we have kind of over-selected the number, but that is because we want to make sure that when it comes down, we have more strategies that we are able to show progress on, if that makes sense. It's
So is
kind of
that-
it's kind of a strategy. more
Is that up to the city to determine which strategies?
Yes, we
they
get to
implement?
pick which
Okay.
strategies from a very specified list, and that's included, the list is included as attachment 2. Those are all of the strategies that the state provides for us in state code. So then, if you look at attachment 1, you will see the top 5 there that we currently have in our plan. And some of those we will be able to show some progress on, but we may not be able to. It's a very arbitrary measurement of what accounts for progress. Last year when we did ours, and I felt that I had sent everything into the state that they needed, they came back and said, okay, well, you met your basic 3, you're certified, but you don't qualify for funding because you didn't make your other 2. And I was given, and the state allows an opportunity to fix that. And basically for one of them, I just had to go in and add all the dates of the meetings that we had and what was on the agenda and what we discussed that had anything to do with housing, and that bumped the other one up to certification. So it really is very arbitrary. And the state staff that has been assigned has been amazing because they recognize that cities are kind of filling their way and they are doing a lot of the same things. So we have strategies that we've added that are the ones listed there. And we feel that we will be able to show progress on these to the level needed to be able to qualify for priority funding for transportation from the state. So that is what we have. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. This is rather convoluted, but it is what it is.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, this first item says rezone for densities necessary to include, assure the production, right? Is that the first strategy?
Yes, rezone for densities necessary to facilitate the production of moderate income housing. Yes.
Okay, so let's say that there's a part of the city that is now zoned for just single-family homes. But because of the location or whatever kind of opportunity there is, you could look at that and say, well, that might be a place that we could build, higher density. How does that get changed, and how does that look? Do citizens have to come and do that? Is that the city that petitions that?
Yeah, so that's one of the strategies that we were able to show because we had done things like Westfield Central and also the traditional neighborhood development. And
Lakeside.
basically those things were done and we were certified that, but that Westfield's overlay was adopted as an ordinance would be. And also the traditional neighborhood development were also adopted. So they are all part of the same system that you see coming through from you very many times when Springville Community Development requests a rezone or requests adoption of a traditional.
And that's all developer driven.
Not necessarily. So like Westfield's overlay was purely driven by the city, looking at areas in the community that we felt that were ripe for being able to be developed on a little bit of a higher density, or at least being, and like we said, the Westfields is an overlay, so it just allows a density bonus. But then also certain areas like Lakeside Landing that came in and did, or that's doing more of the traditional neighborhood development, where we've set up the form-based codes, and Josh can speak better to those because he was here when those were adopted. I was not, so as far as the process goes. But those are typically, the T&Ds are typically more developer-driven with the city along for the ride, because
Say that again,
the T&Ds, traditional neighborhood development, those are specific plans that we have adopted for specific areas that allow an even more, not only a greater density, but the greater flexibility as far as the style of homes. Westfield Central is done under a T&D. So whereas the Westfield's overlay was very much community or community development, city driven, the T&D working with a developer who wanted to be able to do a little bit more and was willing to work with the city to create a product that we wanted and was part of our overall goals for the city, we developed the Westfield Central TND. So so when it gets to the TND section, Josh, please correct me, it's much more of a collaborative effort between a developer and, who owns the property and wants to do something, and this community together. The overlay was purely community development driven.
What is the TND again?
So, really the answer to the first question is it can be a property owner can initiate a rezone or the city can initiate a rezone. This strategy, we really picked it because we were doing that. We didn't want to just pick it and hope somebody did something so that we could meet the intent of the zone. But the catch and what Carl is, I think, trying to point out is that we can only rezone so many times. So once we've zoned Westfield Central or we've zoned Lakeside, we've done it. We can't keep making progress unless we unzone it and rezone it, unzone it and rezone it. But the Westfield's overlay, the Westfield Central, the traditional neighborhood development overlay, was an overlay that essentially created a picture frame whereby the city or developer could come in and propose a plan with a wide variety of flexibility, and then the city council could have the legislative authority to adopt the picture that the person wanted to put in the frame. So the TND just makes the frame, and then an applicant brings us a picture, and the city council decides whether there's a picture they like, and then we adopt a specific neighborhood plan under the overlay, and that's what we did at Westfield Central, or the couple lots that are being built by Holdaway Park on 200 North. Those are the two places we've done that.
Is that reset every year? That was my
No,
second
zoning-
question was, it's like, okay, so we have objective number one of rezoning to do that. We did that this year, but like you said, it does a big part of the city. Do they continue to give you credit
No,
for that?
you have to make progress over the last reporting year.
So it's every year it resets.
So that's why we struggled on some of these, because we could only adopt regulations to permit accessory dwelling units once, because we allowed them across the whole city, and we did it. So we can't make progress on it because it was a one-shot thing. So that's really the reason why we're adopting a bunch of strategies, so that we don't get caught one strategy short of the A+. We want to have as many to choose from when we get to the reporting period as possible, so that we can get that A+.
And the annual reporting came because cities were doing exactly what they were saying. Well, we've done it once. What more do and so we're done. And so as a result, there wasn't any significant progress being made year over year towards meeting the state's moderate income housing goals. So with something like the rezone, sometimes it can get us through more than one reporting period because it's a process. So, we had identified this area as a good location for it to consider rezone. Then we did an analysis of that. Then we took it to the planning commission. And so we can kind of show the steps. And if that process takes us more than a year, but we can show that we're continually, then sometimes we can get it to last for more than one reporting period. Right now with that one, we are at the point where we have done what we can, and we have to now wait for the developers to do something. It's no longer in our hands to be able to have any control over that.
Also, your question points out kind of a struggle that we have with these strategies, like that first strategy. What is a density sufficient to facilitate the production of moderate income housing? Downtown Salt Lake has no density limitations. How much affordable housing is being built in the Astra high-rise on State Street in Salt Lake? I don't know if there's any affordable housing in there, but it's the tallest building in Utah. And if you calculate the density over the footprint of that building, it's probably one of the higher density or highest density places in Utah. But nobody making 120% of AMI is moving in there. So the disconnect between zoning and affordability
Yeah.
is a big problem here. It's just like
I was gonna have two questions. The
Yes.
one is you have control over the zoning, but you don't ultimately have control over how much they end up charging for the homes.
no,
Exactly,
the market
exactly.
drives
So the
that.
market's going to shift and change. And then my second question is there any guarantee to access to these gateway funds? Even if you met all of the demands year over year, it's still just a ability to apply for these.
We get, it's essentially like you get bonus points. So if
Yeah.
they rank everybody 0 to 10,
better.
you get, you start with 2 bonus points because you get some extra priority.
Right.
But yes,
Do you guys know where we stack up in relation to other cities?
We have the last reporting period, which was August 1st of 2023, and originally went in, we certified 3, so we were compliant with the state, but we did not qualify for the priority funding. When we were given the opportunity to fix the inadequacies in our reporting, we were able to have 4 of ours meet the criteria that they set, and 1 was not. So we're kind of, we don't get the extra bonus for being really good, but we kind of get the middle bonus for being good.
so for context, we don't necessarily, there's not a roster of how many strategies each city was certified progress in.
Actually,
but
there is.
okay, so there's,
Yeah, so, yeah,
in context, the first year, nobody passed the first time.
Yes. So one of the things that the state law required is that the reports are now put online at the Department of Workforce Services Community Development page. And I'm more than happy to send that link to all of you. So if you want to go in and, check out and see what other cities are doing or how things are working with them, you can do that. And it allows you to pull each of their reports. But that was one of the things that was added in the law, is that they wanted this some transparency and accountability for the cities. So they added them to this list.
Yeah, so you could go tabulate it yourself.
When was the last time we got funds?
So,
Well, that's where it's funny too. We don't know what that means.
yeah.
I don't think anybody knows what that means because we didn't qualify for priority funding last year, and we got $14 million for 1600 South.
Yeah, so
So when the legislature writes a bill and says, "Hey, we'd like to get $14 million to 1600 South to finish that project," the legislature does what it does. So we haven't seen this play out for long enough because this is really the second
this will
reporting
only be
period.
the second reporting period. Yes,
This is just a few-year program.
Yeah, it
It's-
started in 2022.
yeah, with the reporting mechanisms.
And they keep
added
making
in.
incremental
And they-
changes
yes.
every year
Yeah.
before they let us see if it actually works.
So if you let's just say you put an overlay like you talk about and identify an area of the city, and like maybe you've done the Westfield, so I may be catching up to you.
Yeah.
So we put the overlay out there, but you're waiting for the developer to come in and say, yeah, this looks like a good opportunity. Then as that developer pulls a permit, is that considered progress?
No,
Or is
because
just the overlay.
the strategy was adopt zoning.
Yes. So then what you'll see. So for example, like one of the questions they ask on the report is, from this strategy, how many affordable units have been created? And our response is typically none, and then they ask why, and we're like, because the developer has not dedicated any. So we can basically call out the developer. There is such a disconnect at the state legislature, being very developer driven, that density and affordability are synonymous, and there is absolutely no connection between those two things whatsoever.
But these new ones seem to make it so that there's more of a carrot to
There is, and so
to
yes,
actually have the moderate income housing.
Yes,
because
so-
you
Goes back
can
to his
you can
question.
waive fees.
Where we can essentially check off 2 boxes, where if we incentivize that they price the homes at a certain
Yeah.
point as a city, then now we've increased density in moderate income housing, and we're giving them
Right. And that's why a lot of those strategies
Yeah.
are in our implementation of them, will require deed restriction of those units to make sure that they are affordable and that they remain affordable, just like the strategy that Carla had us adopt last year regarding public infrastructure districts.
Yes,
And
so-
nobody's bitten off on that because nobody wanted to dedicate the deed restricted units. But that does, if we are providing direct financial assistance either through one of these districts or by waiving fees, that's the quid pro quo for that is that they do guarantee that units are and remain affordable.
Right, 'cause
Yes.
the state will provide, I can speak to this, because the state will provide low-interest funding for a development project.
They will now, yes.
They do it, but the carrot is the low interest. The club is that whoever buys that property has to occupy it, and like you said, it's deed driven. And
Yes.
So that's a real challenge for developers, because then, yeah, you're getting a better interest rate, may save you 2%, but now you've only got a limited scope of people that can buy that property. So
And they
that's
have also put the owners on the city to
to
be the gatekeeper on whether or not those properties are really being.
You're policing
Yes,
it, and
we-
then you're
yes.
also, and Springville's not an opportunity zone, is it?
No, we are not. We
Well,
do.
let's see the little.
We have a little tiny corner of the area out on the north end of the city that is part of Provo's opportunity zone.
Does the census tract overlap?
Yes, exactly. And so, but typically we don't meet the census tract requirements for an opportunity zone. But like Josh stated, last year, we had a lot of pressure from a developer to create a public infrastructure district policy. We did that. One of the things that we put in it is that for various reasons was that we wanted deed restricted housing if it was going to be a residential development, and that we were going to allow you this benefit of using the city's municipal bonding. They came to us and they wouldn't, and we didn't even say, and our policy didn't say that you have to do a certain percentage or anything, that just said that there needs to be deed restricted housing. They could have done one and they would have met that. And their argument was, we create affordable housings all the time. Ours are, only 380,000 versus, and so we're like, no, that's not the same. So we do run up against that. The good thing is that in this report, in this new reporting, in the changes in the questions and the answers that they've put on there, they want us to call out developers directly, whereas previously we would just say we weren't allowed to tell what specific developers, and now they want us to. All of this has come from the housing affordability, the state's Commission on Housing Affordability.
The new guy.
Yeah, and there has been a lot of disconnect in understanding the fact that the cities can do all we can do, but we cannot control what a developer, what they sell their home, sell the home for, unless we are able to deed restrict, and then that becomes difficult on
How
a
do you,
lot of
how
us.
do you deed restrict it then? You
It's
doing like a conditional use permit, or?
no, that's once again something that we don't do. It's done through the title, like an easement or anything else. It's attached to the deed that the home has to be sold for a certain amount or to a certain group of people, and it becomes very difficult for the cities to police that. Because we basically have to keep track of when every home is sold, and then we have to go in and check and make sure who it was sold to, and do all of that, and it becomes quite a headache.
There's a couple other ways we can do that too, aside from just offering kind of a quid pro quo financial incentive. There's a concept called inclusionary zoning, which essentially is using the city's zoning power, the police power, to require that in any residential development, a certain number or a certain percentage of housing is produced that is affordable to a certain range of income. And they could require that that be deed restricted. So you could say, hey, we're going to zone this area R110, but 10% of the lots out, 10% of the houses that are built out here have to be affordable to someone making 80 to 120% AMI, and that needs to be deed restricted with provisions about how much appreciation can be captured at each sale and all those types of things. But that kind of administration work is typically done by a nonprofit housing agency or authority that is able to work both the property side and the tenant side of, or the buyer side of the market, and has the administrative apparatus to deal with that. And that's not something we have here, but it is actually one of the things listed in one of the strategies.
That's why I think, to your point, if we have no control over how much we're getting, and we're jumping through all these hoops to try to like get bonus points, you know, but we don't really get a control whether we get any of the funding, you know what I mean? Say the city has, I'm just making a scenario, say the city's done a great job, they get 20 bonus points, but nobody gives us any money. The city has spent a lot of money and, you know, restricted use of property, things like that. What's the strategy there? I don't see a win game is what I'm asking.
Well, the intent of the ordinance is to deliver affordable housing.
Yeah, but I'm a builder, so I can totally tell you where I'm at.
Right.
I'm a builder, I'm a developer, just to
Yes.
be all things even. So I'm just trying to understand, because I hear that all the time. Why don't you build, you know, more affordable housing? And I'm like, well, I just paid $250,000 for this building lot. And people are telling me, well, that's way too much money. I should be able to buy a house and live there for $270,000. I'm like, well,
As an example, part of the reason in the strategy here is, just as an example, right now there's a minimum quarter-acre lot. Say as an example, you could put the same house that you build on a quarter-acre lot on a half-acre lot, no matter what you do. But part of this incentive would incentivize smaller lot sizes, and then essentially shrinking the homes to more of an affordable and attainable square footage, where your price per square foot would then be lowered.
I understand that concept of
And-
dividing the pie up, but what I'm saying is it's like Spanish Fork. You know, my daughter just bought a house in Spanish Fork, over $600,000, and it's like an 8-acre lot. So to your thing, and I know how much it costs for 2x4. I know what, you know what I mean.
Yes.
You just like 2 + 2 is 4 no matter what.
Yes.
And I work with the state all the time right now on trying to figure out, like I've talked with all the people at the state. I'm just trying to understand how the city interfaces with that, because the state's really great to work with and they tell you all these programs, but then it's like, well, here's the carrot, here's the carrot, here's the carrot, oh, and here's the club.
Yes.
Right.
You can only sell to 10% of people, and most of those people can't qualify for the banks.
And what
Yes,
we've
and-
learned a lot of those lessons is like coming out of Westfield Central. We said a lot of those lots are cottage lots, which are small,
Yeah, there's like,
single family. They're 35-foot wide lots. One builder has a product that's like 3,200 square feet. It's a 3-story, 5-bedroom, 4.5 bath. It's bigger than any of the houses on quarter-acre lots around it. And I just sit there scratching my head saying, okay, there will be some product in there that we've approved that will hit that. So out on Lakeside, when we have a cottage lot, we actually put a maximum square footage on it. That we'll see how somebody breaks that, but we're just trying to take another step to say, no, we really mean for this to be an entry-level home and not trying to maximize the return on every single lot.
How was that received, the square footage?
It actually came from the developer who paid for the code. I don't know if they understand or even know it's in there, but we'll see. The first group that's coming to build is very much a starter home company, so they haven't had any issue with it. But I'm sure at some point somebody will say, "What? I can only build 1,700 square feet here." So
and did they have a target price on those homes down there? I mean,
No.
not yet that I know of. I mean, LGI is the first one out of the gate down there, so they'd be the ones to ask.
I went and looked, 'cause,
Yeah. So
I mean, there's like nothing betwing the sidewalk that, you know, we get the 5 foot,
Oh, you mean at Westfield Central?
yes,
I don't think there's going to. They're being listed by the property owner developer as mid 400s or low 400s. I hope that some of the smaller 2 or 3 bedroom townhomes will come in under that, but I don't have a lot of hope. But in Lakeside, nobody's close enough that they've shared their market segmentation with us.
Yeah, and one thing we've seen at the state legislature is, as always, they seem to be playing catch up. And so initially, all of the developers are out there saying, oh, we could do this if it was cities. If cities would only do this, if cities would only do that, then we could build an affordable home. So then cities did all these things, and it didn't change anything. And so then developers say, well, we can't because we don't have access to the lending that we need, and so we're not able to build. And so then the state comes in and says, okay, so they develop the program where they kind of are trying to make up this gap in the financing for residential developers, and there is truth to that. I mean, developers are having a hard time getting financing. They're not making that up. That's accurate. And one of the things that has come from this housing commission is this idea that we need to let the market do what the market is supposed to do. And so if we can get a surplus of units, then the housing prices will come down. And so in order to get the surplus of units, we have to help builders build and help them to be able to get this financing so they can go out and build all the spec homes like was happening in the early 2000s and prices. Everybody and their dog could buy a house, and I should have bought one then, and my parents tell me that all the time, and I didn't. But so it's always just kind of this moving target of things that the state is trying to fix. And so they did it, you saw not this last session, but the session before, they provided loans to first-time home buyers trying to get into a new home, hoping that would start moving things around. There was not a lot of people who took advantage of that, simply because although it was a very nice set, a very significant amount of money, it wasn't enough to make a dent in being able to still buy a brand new home.
That's the $20,000.
That's the $20,000.
I can speak to that because the people, in order to do it, it had to be a home under $400,000.
It had to be a home under
But you had to be able to qualify for the home, and you had to meet a certain. So you've got two things coming at it. You've got the price of the home, and then you've got the income level that is the minimum. You can't make more than this much net money. So the sliver of people that could actually qualify for that $20,000 down payment was very difficult.
Yeah, and the homes that fit the criteria as well. It just didn't work. And we're very fortunate to have Representative White, who represents Springville City, who is very much an advocate for housing, and also recognizing that cities are working hard. And so he and I have talked about, they need to extend that $20,000 to let people buy existing homes. If there is an older bungalow in a historic area in a neighborhood, or in an older neighborhood, that they should be able to utilize that as well, because then
or not be a first-time home buyer.
Yeah, exactly. And so there are things. So we saw that happen, and then this year they tapped into the TTIF and the PTIF funding to provide to make up that gap for developers who are having problems with the lending situation as it is out there right now. And so we'll see how many are taking advantage of that. They also allowed for infrastructure districts that don't require the city's approval like a public infrastructure district does, and set some limitations on that as well, and very geared towards infrastructure and for residential development. So a lot of things, and they're just going to kind of keep moving. But I'm sure you have all heard all of the horror stories about how many units the state of Utah is behind, and how many we're going to have to build, and what our growth is. And so it's all just, a lot of it is just trying to play catch up. And so a lot of times cities feel like they're on the hamster wheel, just trying to make something that will work. So that's what we've got here. like I said, we've administration has talked. Josh and I have been very deliberate in talking with finance and legal and the administration to make sure that these goals are doable without creating a great deal of stress for the city. And so we feel confident in these ones that we've chosen. So that's what we have for you. Welcome to
I have
my
one more
moderate income housing soapbox.
I have one more question.
Of course.
I feel like we're going to learn a lot about each other with this question. One of the strategies from the state is talking about parking and how to reduce, you can essentially reduce or omit parking requirements as part of one of those strategies.
Yes.
I know parking is a sensitive topic.
Yes.
But as I was reading through that list, what came to mind was the Allen's block as an example, because the parking was allowed to be reduced on that particular block, which we could have checked that box, essentially. But it was a case-by-case basis that the Allen's block was approved, as the Planning Commission before looked at it and said, okay, that seems appropriate. I do ask, I wonder why wouldn't we include that as one of our strategies to be able to get one of the spaghetti noodles to stick on the wall?
I will give you my answer, and I think that it will fit with Josh's, but I never really know, because I've been known to go rogue. We all know that. A lot of it is because we would need to put those things in code, and because there's still a lot of education and discussion that we would want to have both with the Planning Commission, with the City Council, with city staff, with the community about that. We didn't feel that it was something for this year on this reporting that we would be able to do anything with. Recognizing that it is a discussion that we want to have, that we are taking every opportunity we can to educate and to talk about the benefits of it, and to also talk about the concerns, any myths about it, different things. And so basically it was just a strategic decision that we felt that maybe later on as we move down the road, that will be something we'll be able to include, but we were just not, it would not be something that we could show specific steps in being able to certify, if that makes sense. Josh, would you say that that is accurate?
Yeah, we just didn't want to presume we were ready to appear like we were saying we were gonna go after a certain outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we wanted to be respectful of the concerns that have been brought to us, both from the community and from the commission and the council, and not just be ramming that down anyone's throat when we wanted to make sure we had a very thoughtful discussion about that.
I think the one thing that might help too is what proves out in the new projects that are going down around, where we are approaching that kind of taking that kind of approach where you have a walkable community. I think that's kind of a good test bed for us to say, how's that working? Is it gonna help our community? Because we have snow removal, we have other things, and if everybody's parking on the street, then how do we balance that? So I think that'll be a great test for us. Because I was down there today, I went and looked, and yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Yeah.
That's why we're glad something's finally coming out of the ground.
Yeah.
If we anticipated, that before now we'd have something to look at and say, hey, do you like the way this turned out or not? And it's kind of hard to do that at footing and foundation, but it'll go quick.
It will prove itself. I think that's the good part about it, and we can have public comment on that, because that'll make a big difference on how those things come. Because
Yeah. So.
I have one last. It might seem like a dumb question, but what is the the drive for the mass transit, for the train to come? What is that? What does that equal for us? What is the outcome for the city to be able to access that?
Oh, for a front runner?
Yeah. I imagine it's wonderful, but I'm just wondering, what is it? Obviously this is a big carrot to say, hey, we're gonna have a front runner station here, and what is it? What are the good points about?
Well, it's really just part of what it has to be a multi-pronged regional transportation plan. We can't build ourselves out of congestion on the freeway. We have to connect arterials across the valley, as we've got a valley that developed with basically one highway through it and little grids interspersed along the highways, and then those grids expanded until they ran into each other and nobody built any other connector roads. So this is one of those strategies, along with providing active transportation facilities and better local transit, to provide a regional kind of commute transit option that we hope, or that the intent will be that it provides an option for people that are making that work commute and move some of those trips from cars to a train. We can't ever realistically expect that transit is going to be a sole solution to congestion, because we're just, especially in the built form of our state as it is right now, our form of development is not that what we would call transit supportive.
Right.
But for us, what the front runner provides is essentially putting the whole Wasatch Front a stop away, a convenient train ride away from Springville, and that anything that we locate close to that, and that anything that is then accessible through the bus network, becomes one of a wide array of destinations that are really available to the whole metro in a more convenient, more easy fashion. On our end, it also allows us to concentrate business activities and housing in that area, knowing that especially the number of commute trips that we could expect coming out of that number of units will be less, because they're located next to a high-frequency transit facility or a high-capacity transit facility than they would if we put it somewhere else. So it makes sense from a planning perspective to aggregate housing development around that node as opposed to somewhere else. And it hopefully will have the double effect of, if we design it right, allowing those people that live there to meet more of their daily needs with short trips, be able to get to the rec center or Smith's or to a barbershop or a tax accountant in that area, so they don't have to necessarily get in a car and get on an arterial street, get on 12th West, get on 4th South to make that trip. So those are some of the reasons, both for us as a city and from a regional transportation perspective.
Does the
it's kind
state
of positive.
have a master plan for that commuter rail, or are they just hoping that cities will meet the demands and develop themselves in a way that will?
Okay. A couple of years ago, the state actually passed a bill requiring station area plans next to any fixed guideway facility. So that's actually BRT tracks and front runner. So Provo's got a lot of work to do. Salt Lake's got a lot of work to do, especially where they have a front runner, and tracks.
Yeah.
The circumference around like a BRT station is less than a front runner station. But we're actually, in the next couple of months, you will see our station area plan. And while that doesn't mandate specific outcomes, it says you have to consider, moderate income housing. You have to consider all these other things that they want to make sure that you evaluate as you're making that plan. It's kind of like the National Environmental Policy Act, the NEPA. It doesn't say you must have this outcome, but it says you have to analyze your impact on the land and animals and all these things as you go through the process. Same thing with the station area plans. And there's actually a mandatory adoption date for those, depending on whether you already have or you're having a future fixed guideway facility. But we're going to be ahead of the curve on that by getting it adopted well ahead of front runner showing up.
When's the projection for front runner?
We don't have a projection, but they are just finishing up what they would call like a conceptual engineering. We went through the process in the last few years to select an alternative, which is kind of a federally mandated process called alternatives analysis that said, yes, it should be a train, even though we all kind of knew for 20 years it's going to be a train. And now we're doing the engineering to see how much room it takes up and where the right-of-way needs to go and what the impacts will be to property and utilities. and that will help us get into the environmental clearance stage, which we hope, if you're at all familiar with NEPA, that it will be what's called an EA, or an environmental assessment, not an environmental impact statement, which is a whole nother order of magnitude more work and more expense. It's not and so once we have that done, it will essentially be ready to seek funding. So it's not unrealistic that if that stays on track and we get funding immediately when that environmental engineering process is complete, that we could have a facility enter service, or have a front-runner extension enter service in the 10-year period.
So is the city required to do that environmental study and everything else? So they
No,
pay for that, or
UTA, as the project sponsor, does all of the engineering and environmental
they
work
pay
for that.
in other
Yes.
budgets?
Yes.
But UTA does have, they've just recently released their 50-year plan, regional transportation plan. Once again, I can send you links to those. And then there's also a public meeting, is it Thursday?
Is it this Thursday?
I
or
believe it
it
is,
next
about the
Thursday?
front runner, and we can send you information about that too. If
I
any
think
of
it
you-
got moved to
Did
June.
it get moved? Okay, well, still on my calendar. I'm gonna be sitting in a room all by myself again.
Yeah, but we'll make sure you know about that. They're probably kind of an initial public engagement open house for the environmental engineering process.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And we understand this is a process. I mean, it's difficult for the people who have to administer it to understand, and it's a lot. If you have additional questions, you know how to get a hold of us. Please feel free to reach out if you want clarification on anything. So thank you.
As this is a legislative item, we'll open a public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So we have completed all of our items. Anything additional from staff?
We do.
Oh, we need to vote. Yes. Discuss.
I think it's great. I'm very much on board with it in terms of trying to incentivize in any and other ways the housing gap that we're in the state. But I mean, I think Carla, you did a great job answering questions as they were coming to you. Josh, you too. I think it seems smart to be able to have more strategies to include rather than fewer, so that we have more opportunity to check things off with the state.
Anyone have concerns to discuss?
I think you did a great job. Thanks for answering all the questions, so. Both of you, so.
Or a motion?
I move to recommend that the city council approve the amendment to the general plan's moderate income housing plan element to add 7 new implementation strategies.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. With that, we've concluded our business. Nothing further from staff. Then a motion to adjourn.
My motion, we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We need to sign that, right? So